Chapter 3 The Burrow. Run! breathed Harry, creeping to the window and pushing it up so they could touch the bars. Ron, how did you... What the... Harry's mouth fell open as full impacted for what he was seeing at him. Ron was leaning out the back window of an old turquoise car, which was parked in mid-air. Grinning at Harry from the front seats were Fred and John, Ron's elder twin brothers. "All right, Harry, what has been going on?" said Ron. "Why haven't you been answering my letters? I have asked you to say about 12 times, and then Dad came home and said you'd got an official warning for using magic in front of muggles. It wasn't me, and how did he know?" "He works for the ministry," said Ron. "You know we are not supposed to be south outside school." "Bit bridge coming from you," said Harry, starting at the floating car. "Oh, this doesn't count," said Ron. "We are only borrowing this. It is just. We didn't enchant it, but doing magic in front of those muggles you live with." "I told you I didn't, but I will take you too long to explain now. Look, can you explain to them at Hogwarts that the Dursleys have looked up me and won't let me come back, and obviously I can't magic myself out, because the ministry will think that is the second spell I have done in 3 days. So, stop gibbering," said Ron. "We have come to take you home with us, but you can't magic me out either." "We don't need to," said Ron, jerking his head towards the front seat and grinning. "You forgot who I have got with me." "Tie that about that bar," said Fred, throwing the end of the rope to Harry. "If the Dursley wake up, I am dead," said Harry, as he tied the rope tightly around a bar and Fred reared up the car. "Don't worry," said Harry, "and stand back." Harry moved back into the shadows next to Hedwig, who seemed to have realized how important this was and kept still and silent. The car revved louder and louder, and suddenly, with a crunching noise, the bars were pulled clean out of the window. As Fred dropped straight up in the air, Harry ran back to the window to see bars dangling in few feet above the ground. Panting, Ron hoisted them up into the car. Harry listened exhaustedly, but there was no sound from the Dursleys' bedroom. When the bars were safely in the back seat with Ron, Fred reserved as close as possible to Harry's window. "Get in," Ron said. "But all my hot stuff, my wand, my broomstick, where it is? Lock it in the cupboard under the stairs. I can't get out of this room." "No problem," said George, from the front passenger seat. "Out of the way, Harry." Fred and John climbed carefully through the window into Harry's room. "You had to hand it to them," thought Harry, as John took an indulgently hairpin from his pocket and started to pick the lock. "A lot of wizards think it was waste of time, knowing this sort of muggle trick," said Fred. "But we feel they are still worth learning, even if they are a bit slow." There was a small click and the door swung open. "So we will get your trunk. You grab anything you need from your room and hand it out to Ron," whispered John. "Watch out for the bottom stairs. It creaks." Harry whispered back as the twins disappeared onto the dark landing. Harry dashed around his room, collecting his things together and passing him out of the window to Ron. Then he went to help Fletch and John have his trunk up the stairs. Harry heard Uncle Vernon catch. At last, panting, they reached the landing. They carried the trunk through Harry's room to the open window. Fred climbed back into the car to pull with Ron, and Harry and George pulled it from the bedroom side. Inch by inch, the trunk slid through the window. Uncle Vernon caught again. "A bit more," panted Fred. Fred, who was pulling from inside the car. "One good push." Harry and George thrust their shoulders against the trunk and it slid out of the window into the back seat of the car. "Okay, let's go," John whispered, but as Harry climbed onto the windowsill, there came a sudden loud thresh from behind him, followed in magical by the thunder of Uncle Vernon's voice. "That radio! I've got it, Hedwig!" Harry tore back across the room as landing light cricket on. He snatched up Hedwig's cage. dashed to the window and passed it out to Ron, who was scrambling back on the chest of drawers, and when Uncle Vernon hammered on Uncle unlocked the door and it crashed open. For a split second, Uncle Vernon stood framing in the doorway when he let out a bellow like an angry bull and devoured at Harry, grabbing him by the ankle. Ron, Fred, and John seized at Harry's arm and pulled as hard as they could. "Petunia!" roared Uncle Vernon. "He is getting away! He is getting away!" The Weasley gave a gigantic duck and Harry's leg slid out of Uncle Vernon's grasp. As soon as Harry was in the car and had slammed the door shut, Ron yelled, "Put your foot down, Fred!" And the car shot suddenly towards the moon. Harry couldn't believe it. He was feared. He went down the window, the night air whipping his hair, and looked back at the shrinking rope stops of the bright dive. Uncle Vernon and Petunia and Dudley were all hanging, dumbstruck out of Harry's window. "See you next time, Summer!" Harry yelled. The Weasley roared with laughter, and Harry sat back in his seat, grinning from ear to ear. "Let her whip out," he told Ron. "She can fly behind us. She hasn't had a chance to swing her wings for ages." John handed the hairpin to Ron in a moment later. Hedwig had soared joyfully out of the window to reach alongside them like a ghost. "So, what is the story, Harry?" said Ron impatiently. "What has been happening?" Harry told him all about Dobby, the warning he had given Harry and Faceso of the violet pudding. There was a long shocked silence when he had finished. "Very fishy," said Fred finally. "Definitively doggy," agreed George. "So he couldn't even tell you who's supposed to be plotting all this stuff." "I don't think he could," said Harry. "I told you every time he got close to letting something slip, he started banging his head against the wall." He saw Fred and John look at each other. "What? You think he was lying to me?" said Harry. "Well," said Fred, "put it the way, house elves have got powerful magic on their own, but they can't usually use it without their master permission. I reckon old Dobby was sent to stop you come back to Hogwarts. Someone's idea of a joke. Can you think of anyone at the school with a grudge against you?" "Yes," said Harry and George together, essentially. "Draco Malfoy," Harry exclaimed. "He hates me." "Draco Malfoy?" said John, turning round. "Not Lucius Malfoy's sons?" "Must be. It is not a very common name." "It is?" said Harry. "Why?" "I have heard that talking about him," said George. "He was a big supporter of you-know-who." "And when you-know-who disappeared," said Fred, craning around to look at Harry. "Lucius Malfoy came back saying he had never meant any of it. But I don't. That reckons he was right in you-know-who's inner circle." Harry had heard the rumors about Malfoy's family before, and it didn't surprise him at all. Draco Malfoy made Dudley Dursley look like a kind, thoughtful, and sensitive boy. "I don't know whether the Malfoys are a house elf," said Harry. "Well, whoever asked him will be an old wizarding family, and they will be rich," said Fred. "Yeah, Mom always wishing he had a house elf to do the in-running," said George. "But all we have got is lousy old Gory in the attic and zombies all over the garden. House elves come with big old manors and castles and places like that. You wouldn't catch one in our house." Harry was silent, judging by the fact that Draco Malfoy easily had the best of everything. His family was rolling in wizard gold. He could just see Malfoy searching around a large manor house. Sending the family's servant to stop Harry going back to Hogwarts also sounded exactly like the sort of thing Malfoy would do. Had Harry been stupid to take Dobby seriously? "I'm glad we came to get you anyway," said Ron. "I was getting really worried that you didn't answer any of my letters. I thought it was Errol's search at first." "Who was Errol?" "Oh, he is a science. It could be the first time he had caught Lisbeth on a Delview. So then I tried to borrow Hermes." "Who?" "The old mom and dad bought Percy when he was made a prefect," said Fred from the front. "But Percy wouldn't let him to me," said Ron. "Said he needed him. Percy's been acting very oddly this summer," said John, frowning. And he has been sending a lot of letters and spending a lot of time shut up his room. I mean, there's only so many time can polish a perfect batch. You are driving too far west, Fred, he added, pointing at the compass on the car's dashboard. Fred tapped the steering wheel. So, does your dad you know you have got the car? Said Harry, guessing the answer. No, said Ron. He had to work tonight. Hopefully we will be able to get it back in the garage without Mom noticing we flew it. What does your dad do at the Ministry of Magic? Anyway, he works in the most boring department, said Ron, the Missiles of Muggles office. The what? It's all to do bewitching things that are Muggle-made. You know, in case they end back in a Muggle shop or house. Like last year, some old witch died and her tea set was sold to an antique shop. The Muggle woman bought it, took it home and tried to serve her friend's tea in it. It was a nightmare that was working overtime for weeks. What happened? The teapot went breakfast and squished boiling tea all over the place, and one man ended up in the hospital with the sugar tongs clamped on his nose. He was going frantic. There's only him and an old woodcock called Prankins in the office, and they had to memory charms and all sorts of to cover it up. But your dad, this car, Fred laughed. Yeah, that is mad about everything to do with muggles. Our shed's full of muggle stuff. He takes it apart, puts sauce on it, and puts it back together again. If he raided our house, he did have to put himself straight under the breath. It drives Mom mad. That is the main road, said John, peering down through the windscreen. He'll be there in 10 minutes, just as well. It's getting light. A faint pinkish glow was visible along the horizon to the east. Fred brought the car lower, and Harry saw a dark patchwork of fields and clumps of trees. We are a little way outside the village, said John. Artery said Capel. Lower and lower went the flying car. The edge of a brilliant red sun was now gleaming through the trees. Touchdown, said Fred. With that a slim bump, they hit the ground. They had landed next to the tumble ground garage in a small yard, and Harry looked out for the first time at Ron's house. It looked as such. It had once been a large stone pigsty, but extra rooms had been added here and there until it was several hot stories high, and so crooked it looked as such it was held up by magic, which Harry reminded himself it probably was. 4 or 5 chimneys were perching on top of the red roof. A lopsided truck in the ground near the enchanted read the burrow. Round the front door lay a jumble of leeching broods and a very rusty cauldron. Several fat round chickens were picking their way around the yard. It's not much, said Ron. It is brilliant, said Harry happily, thinking of Pride Drive. They had got out of the car. Now we will go upstairs really quickly, said Fred, and wait for Mom to call us for breakfast. Then Ron, you come downstairs going. Mom, look who turned up in the night. And she will be all pleased to see Harry, and no one need ever know him without the car. Right, said Ron. Come on, Harry. Asleep at the Ron had gone nasty greenish color. His eye fixed on the house, and the other 3 rolled around. Mrs. Weasley was marching across the yard, scratching chickens, and fought up a short, plump, kind-faced woman. It was remarkable how much she looked like a saber-toothed tiger. Ah, said Fred. Oh dear, said John. Mrs. Weasley came out to a halt in front of them, her hands on her hips, starting from the ghostly face onto the next. She was wearing a flower apron with the one sticking out of his pocket. So, she said. Morning, Mom, said John, and what he clearly thought was the jaunty, winning voice. Have you any idea how worried I have been seen? Said Mr. Weasley in a deadly whisper. Sorry, Mom, but see, we had to All three of Mr. Weasley's sons were taller than she was, but they cowered as though her wrath broke over them. Best empty. No nut. Card gone. Could have quart. Out of my mind with worry. Did you care? Never, as long as I lived. You wait until your father gets home. We never had trouble like this from Bill or Charlie or Percy. Perfect, Patsy, muted Fred. You could do it taking a leaf out of Percy's book, yelled Mr. Weasley, prodding a finger in Fred's chest. You could have that. You could have been seen. You could have lost your father his job. It seemed to go on the hours. Mr. Weasley had shouted herself to Harriet before she turned on Harry, who backed away. I'm very pleased to see you, Harry, dear, she said. Come in and have some breakfast. She turned and walked back into the house, and Harry, after a nervous glance at Ron, who nodded and jauntily followed her. The kitchen was small and rather cramped. There was a sculptured wooden table and chairs in the middle, and Harry sat down on the edge of his seat. Looking around, he had never been in a wizard house before. The clock on the wall opposite him had only one hand and no number at all. Written around the edge were things like time to make tea, time to feed the chickens, and you are late. Books were scratching their Diep on mantelpiece. Books with lead titles like Charm Your Ouches, Entertainment in Baking, and 1 Minute Fits. It is magic. And unless Harry's ears were deafening him, the old radio next to the sink had just announced that coming up with which hour, with the popular singing circuit. Celestina woke back. Mr. Weasley was clattering around, cooking her breakfast a little haphazardly, throwing dirty looks at her sons as she threw sausages into a frying pan. Every now and then she muttered things like, don't know what you were thinking of, and never would have believed it in. I don't blame you, dear, she asserted, typing at our knife sausages onto his plate. Arthur and I have been worried about you, too. Just like night we were saying we did come and get your ourselves if you hadn't written back to Ron by Friday. But really, she was now adding 3 fired eggs to his plate. Flying an ill-geared car halfway across the country. Anyone could have seen you. She flickered her wand cautiously at the washing up in the sink, which began to clean itself, clinking gently in the background. It was cloudy, Mom, said Fred. You keep your mouth closed while you are eating, Mr. Weasley snapped. They were starving him, Mom, said Dawn. And you, said Mr. Weasley, but it was with the slightly softened expressions that she started cutting hair bread and buttering it for him. At the moment, there was the devotions in the form of a small red-haggard creature in a long night dress, who was appeared in the kitchen, gave a small squeal and ran out again. Ginny, said Ron in the dunter to Harry, my sister, she has been talking about you all summer. Yeah, she will be wanting your autograph. Harry grinned at Fred, but he caught his mother's eye and bent his face over his plate without another word. Nothing more was said until all 4 plants were clean, which took a partially short time. Bluntly, I am tired, John Fred, setting down his knife and fork at last. I think I will go to bed and you will not. Stop it, Mr. Weasley. It is your own fault you have been up all night. You are going to decomment the garden for me. They are getting completely out of hand again. Oh, Mum. And you too, she said, glaring at Ron and Dawn. You can go up to the bed, dear, she added to Harry. You needn't ask them to fly that wretched car. But Harry, who felt wide awake, said quickly, I have never seen a degardening. That's very sweet of you, dear, but it's still work, said Mr. Weasley. Now, let's see what his Lockhart got to say on the subject. And she pulled on a very heavy book from the stack on the mantelpiece. Dawn growled, Mom, we know how to degarment a garden. Harry looked at the cover of Mr. Weasley's book. Written across in the fancy gold letters were the words, "The Julius Lockhart's Guide to Household Pets." There was a big photograph on the front of a very look wizard with the wavy blonde hair and bright blue eyes. As all the way in the wizarding world, the photograph was moving. The wizard who Harry supposed was Guidoli Lockhart kept winking cheerily up at them all. Mr. Weasley beamed down at him. "Oh, he's marvelously," she said. "He knows his household pets. All right, it is a wonderful book." Mom fancies him," said Fred in a very audible whisper. "Don't be so ridiculous, Fred," said Mr. Weasley, her cheeks rather pink. "All right, if you think you know better than Lockhart, you can go and get on with it, and hope that you is their single narn in the garden when I came out to examining it." Yarning and grumbling, the Weasleys started outside with Harry behind them. The garden was large and in Harry's eyes exactly what a garden should be. The Dursley wouldn't have liked it. There were plenty of weeds, and the grass needed cutting, but there were stunted trees all around the walls. Plants Harry had never been slipping from every flower, and a big green pot full of frogs. "Muggles have gardens too, you know," Harry told Ron as they crossed the lawn. "Yeah, I've seen those things there. They think are ornaments," said Ron, bent double with his head in the pennies bush, like fat little Father Christmas with the rushing fishing rods. There was a violent scuffling noise. The peony branch shortened and Ron straightened up. "That is the gum," he said grimly. Get off me! Get off me!" squeaked the Goblin. It was certainly nothing like Father Christmas. It was small and leathery looking, with a large knobbly bat to exactly like a potato. Ron held it at arm's length and kicked it out at him with his horny little feet. He gathered it around the angles and turned it upside down. "This is what you have to do," he said. He raised the gum above his hand. "Get off me," and started to swing it in great circles like a lasso. Seeing the shocked look on Harry's face, Ron added, "It doesn't hurt them. You have just got to make them really dizzy so they can't find their way back to the gum and holes." He let go of the gum's anklets. It fell 20 feet into the air and landed with a thud in a fall over the hedge. "Pitfall," said Fred. "I bet I can get my bejoy that stop." Harry learned quickly not to feel too sorry for the gums. He decided just to drop the first one he caught over the hedge, but the gum, sensing weakness, sank its rather sharp teeth into Harry's finger, and he had a hard job shaking it off until, "Wow, Harry, that must have been 15 feet." The air was soon thick with flying garnets. "See, they are not too bright," said John. "See, sizing 5 or 6 garments at once. The moment they know the G-Nominx is going on the storm up to have a look. You'd think they have learned by now just to say but." Soon the crowd of gums in the field started like walking awake in the straggling line. Their little shoulders hunched. "They will be back," said Ron as they watched the gums disappear into the hedge on the other side of the field. "They love it here. That is too soft with him. He thinks they are funny." Just then the front door slammed. "He is back," said John. "Dad is home." They hurried through the garden and back into the house. Mr. Weasley was slumped in the kitchen chair with his glasses off and his eyes closed. He was a thin man, going bad, but the little hair he was as red a dress as any of his children. He was wearing long green robes which were dusty and traveled warm. "What a night," he mumbled, whomping for the teapots as they all sat down around him. "Night, right, night." An old modern god's fetcher tried to put a hat on me when I had my back turned. Mr. Weasley took a long gulp of tea and said, "Find anything, Dad?" said Fred eagerly. "Oh, were a full shrinking doorway case and a beating kettle jarred Mr. Weasley. There was some pretty nasty stuff that wasn't my department. Such. More ticket was taken away for question about them, extremely old Fredits. But that is the computer on experiment terms. Thank goodness. Why would anyone bother making Dora's case shrink? Said John. To smuggle bedding, said Mr. Weasley. Sell them a key that keeps shrinking to nothing so they can never find it when they need it. Of course, it is very hard to convince anyone because no matter would admit the case keeps shrinking. They will insist that they just keep losing it. Bless them, they will go to any lengths to notch it magic, even if it is staring them in the face. But then, the things our lot have taken to the enchanting, you wouldn't believe. Like cars, for instance. Mr. Weasley has appeared, holding a long poker like a swatch. Mr. Weasley's eye jacket open. He started gushily at his wife. Cars? Molly, dear. Yes, Arthur, cars, said Mr. Weasley, her eyes flashing. Imagine a wizard buying a rustly old car and telling his wife all he wanted to do with it was take it apart to see how it worked. While really he was enchanted to make it fly, Mr. Weasley blinked. Well, dear, I think you will find that he would be quite convincing the law to do that. Even if, or maybe would have done better to tell his wife the truth. There's a loophole in the law, you will find. As long as he wasn't intending to fly the car, the fact that a car could fly wouldn't. Arthur Weasley, you made sure that there was a loophole when you wrote that law, shouted Mr. Weasley. Just so you could carry on tinkering with all that muggle rubbish in your set. And for your information, Harry arrived this morning in the car you were intending to fly. Harry? Said Mr. Weasley blankly. Harry, who? He looked around, saw Harry and jumped. Good Lord, is it Harry Potter? Very pleased to meet you. Ron told us so much about. Your sons flew the car to Harry's house and back last night, shouted Mr. Weasley. What have you got to say about that? Ah, did you really? Said Mr. Weasley anxiously. Did it go all right? I mean, he vouched. A sparkle flew from Mr. Weasley's eyes. That was very wrong, boys. Were very wrong indeed. Let's leave them to it, remarked to Harry, as Mr. Weasley shook like a butterfly. Come on, I'll show you my bedroom. He slipped out of the kitchen and down on the narrow passage to an inviting staircase, wizarding its way up the house. On the third landing, a door stood ajar. Harry just caught sight of the pair and bright brown eyes starting at him before it closed with a snap. Ginny, said Ron, you don't know how weird it is for her to be this shy. She never shut up normally. They climbed through more flights until they reached a door with peeling paint and the smoke squirted on it. Seeing Ronaldo's room, Harry stepped in, his head almost touching the stopping ceiling and blanket. It was like him walking into a furnace. Nearly everything in Ron's room seemed to be a violent shade of orange. The bathrobe, the walls, even the ceiling. Then Harry realized that Ron had converted nearly every inch of the shabby wallpaper with posters of the same scene, 7 witches and wizards, all wearing bright orange robes, carrying broomsticks and waving innaturally. Your Quidditch? Said Harry. The short-legged cannons, said Ron, pointing at the orange bed spears, with the impossible with 2 black sea elves and a splendid cannonball. Not in the Lagway. Ron's school styles books were scorching untidy in the corner, next to a pillar of comics with all seemed to the future, the adventures of Martin's Mix, the Mad Maggle. Ron's magic wand was lying on top of Finch's tank full of frost sand. on the window sill next to his fat gray rat, Scobbers, who was snoozing in a patch of sun, Harry stepped over a pack of self-shuffling playing cards on the floor and looked out of the tiny window. In the full car below, he could see a gang of goblins slinking, one by one, back towards the Weasley hedge. Then he turned to look at Ron, who was watching him almost nervously. As Touch, waiting for his opinion. It is a bit small, said Ron quickly. Not like that room you had with the muggles, and I am right underneath your wall in the attic. He is all the way benching on the pits and groaning. But Harry, grinning widely, said, "This is the best house I have ever been in." Ron's ears went pink.